Match 5 of the tournament. This time we have Khemri versus Orks. This is two pretty bashy teams going up against one another. Fairly hard to damage on both sides. As you can see here, 2-1 victory for the Khemri in favor of the Orks. I'll go ahead and go over the teams real quick. Alright, first off we have the Khemri. The Khemri have 4 players that they can take, but for now, the player in this match only has 3. You have your common linemen here, skeletons, 5 movement allowance, a little bit slower than average, average strength, 2 agility, and in fact, every player on the Khemri team, except I believe for the thrower, which this player did not take, has 2 agility, so they're not very good at handling the ball. Now the skeletons do have regeneration. Every player on a Khemri team has regeneration, which is very nice. But they also have thick skull, which means that they are less likely to get knocked out and more likely to get stunned when they're hit. So even though they come with only 7 armor and they're going to be taking those injury rolls more often, hopefully they'll be staying on the field a little bit longer despite that. Next we have the Blitzras, or the Blitzers for the team. Pretty standard stuff here. 8 armor, so they're a little bit more durable. Have 1 more movement allowance, but that's still pretty average. Normal strength, lower agility, block and regeneration, nothing crazy. General strength skills. And then we have the Tomb Guardians. Now this is a 5 strength big guy with only 1 agility. 9 armor, 4 movement, so pretty slow, but certainly a presence on the field. Has decay, just like some other players on the Nurgle team, which means that when he does take a casualty, he actually receives 2 of them, if that happens. But again, has regeneration, and if regeneration works, it'll heal both of the injuries, which is very nice. Does not have access to general skills, but does have access to strength skills. Now, what you'll notice here is that for a big guy, he actually doesn't have any negative traits. He has nothing that's going to make it so he fails his moves. He is very reliable, and on top of that, Khemri are actually allowed to bring 4 of them, which is fucking insane. So the fact that you have 4 mummies on the field with 5 strength is just crazy. Add that 2 blitzers and you have a very, very strong team, especially when all of the big guys don't have any kind of negative modifier. So, of course, no apothecary because all the players have regeneration, so you don't really need it. Like I said, there's also a thrower. This is nothing unusual. He also has 2 agility, it turns out. I see, I was wrong about that, but yeah, just normal sure hands pass, all that stuff. Moving on to the Orc team. Orcs have a lot of different players they can have. They can have up to 6 different players. This player did not bring the Goblin, which is typically what you use as a ball runner, but you don't have to. First off, we have the linemen. 5 movement, 3 strength, 3 agility, 9 armor. Orcs are usually a bit more durable, so the 9 armor is very nice here. Then you have the thrower with pass and sure hands, makes it easier to get the ball, makes it easier to send the ball other places. Has access to general non-agility skills, but does have access to passing skills, and also has 8 armor, so once again, you don't have to worry too much if you want to use that as your ball carrier. Now Orcs also have the Black Orcs here, which 4 movement and 4 strength, 2 agility, 9 armor. Very strong, very nice front line. If you can level them up and get some like Mighty Blow, they can very quickly start turning into a very dangerous player. And they also have access to general skills, so it's not that hard to get block or frenzy or whatever you might want to have on them. So these guys are pretty nice. We also have blitzers, pretty standard here. General strength, block, 9 armor, nothing unusual. And then the one big guy for the team is a troll. I believe this is exactly the same as the troll on the Goblin team. Nothing different about him. Orc teams can have 4 of those Black Orcs, by the way. They can also have 4 blitzers, and I believe that this player ended up taking the maximum amount of both. So it's a very aggressive build that we're starting off here. 4 players with block and 4 strength Black Orcs. That's just pretty hard to contend with in the early stages of a league. So should be pretty interesting. Anyway, that's all talk about the teams for now. We'll go ahead and get started with the replay. Alright, here we are, beginning of the match. I believe that the coin flip was won by the Khemri player here, who opted to start with defense. You can see the formation that he's set up here. Go ahead and just throw up the skills in case you have a little bit of trouble recognizing the players. So you can see he started off with only 3 linemen on the front of the field. He's got those black orcs to contend with, so that's probably a good move because since the orcs are going to be going first, they're going to get their hits out first, and you want to have as few casualties as possible, especially considering, as we said, that the linemen have lower armor. Even though they have 6 skull, you just kind of want to avoid that. So deprive your opponent of as many hits as they can get. Now, he's got his mummies back a little bit. You know, normally you wouldn't do this with a big guy, but as I said, with mummies, you don't really have to worry about any kind of negative check skill that happens every time you want to move with them. So, you know that you could control them. They're just a little bit slow, so you want to keep them in the general area that you're going to be needing them. Also, as the blitzers on the side on the back here, so even though this is a very center-heavy formation, you know, considering that the orcs don't have a huge amount of movement, they're a little bit faster than the Khemri, but not that much faster. You could pretty easily move your players where they need to go to respond to any kind of offensive push that happens here. So, nice formation. Go and see how the orc player sets up. Keeping the blitzers and the black orcs to the front of the line, pretty nice. Get this opening kick for the mummy, and it's a quick snap. That means that all players on the orc team get to move once for free. They don't have to dodge. They cannot attack, but they can go wherever they want. And it ends up being a touchback. Ball goes to front blitzer. Okay, before we start here, let's just real quick talk about the formation that the orc player chose. So having your black orcs on the front line with the blitzers right behind them is very nice. Your black orcs can easily handle the line of scrimmage on their own, and then your blitzers are, you know, great for blitzing. So you can keep them where they are able to make pushes where needed, and they are free so that they can go ahead and help out anybody else that needs help. But seeing as how this team only has a single lineman on it, I don't think anybody's really going to need all that much help, you know. These guys can pretty much handle the fight on their own. Having the troll back like this is a little bit of a risk. You know, they don't have a whole lot of movement, and they have the really stupid modifier, which means that they kind of need somebody to help them out. So I probably would have put the troll on the front line as well, just so that it was a little bit more reliable to move him. Or if you're going to have him back like this, I would have moved the lineman next to him to kind of negate the penalty that you get from really stupid. That being said, though, it is the first turn and you're playing offense, so I'm not even sure this is worth it just because the troll only has 4 movements. So where can they really go in this first turn that they're going to be able to do anything? You know what I mean? Aside from that, probably would have had the thrower kind of in the middle of the field ready to pick up the ball wherever it landed, get it where it needed to go, but ended up being a touchback, and I like the player that they chose to give the ball to. Having him on blitzer is really nice because, as I've stated many times before, block makes it very hard to knock you down. So it's pretty reliable to have the blitzer being the ball carrier. Now, in this situation, though, I will say, I'm not going to suggest that this is the right thing to do, but I remember I mentioned a few games ago that when you do get a touchback, sometimes it can be nice to throw it on players that would otherwise not be able to get to the ball so that they could try and get a touchdown and get some easy skill points. In this case, that player would probably be the black orc. They only have 2 agility, so they're probably not going to get a hold of the ball that often, if at all. So if you can get one on one of your black orcs and kind of get them towards the end zone for a possible touchdown, wouldn't be too bad. But again, that being said, the black orcs, while they have more strength, a little bit harder to attack, they don't have any skills right now. And considering you're up against a Khemri team with a bunch of 5 strength players that could easily get 2 die blocks on them, blitzer's probably the right call. Starting off, moving the blitzer towards the end zone, probably the right move. Considering, as I said, that it's a very center-heavy defensive formation, you want to try and just kind of rush that end zone for that easy touchdown. The Khemri are not very fast. Fortunately, gets the really stupid proc on the troll, as I was saying. Going for the hits on the linemen. A big goal of a team like this is going to be leveling up your black orcs in as few matches as possible. The sooner that you can get money blow on these guys, the sooner they can dish out more injuries and get more skill points. Now, what I noticed here about how the Orc player was moving is that it seems they did not want to engage with the mummies on the tackle zones. That can be understandable when you're playing something of a lower armor team because you don't want to give the mummy the free hit and potentially injure them. But considering that the Orcs have such high armor and these Black Orcs are so strong, I would say it would be worth it to actually have these players in the tackle zones of the mummies so that they can't move around. They're going to have to hit the person that's marking them, and chances are they're going to have a little bit of difficulty doing that, or if they do hit, they're probably just not going to do much anyway, and they've kind of wasted their turn making a hit instead of moving. Because right now, it is not difficult to have this mummy move down this way and be right on the ball carrier. So, in fact, he could easily blitz the ball carrier even. Khemri immediately responding by sending his players over to the ball carrier, trying to cut him off. And here comes the blitz that I was talking about. 3 dice, incredibly unlikely you're going to fail on 3 dice, especially with a reroll. Ball goes off the field and gets knocked back onto the Orcs half. Very good for the Khemri. Now, when the ball gets knocked off the field like that, it can go pretty much anywhere. So, that happens to be a very, very lucky roll. Khemri is immediately marking up all the players on the Orc team so they can't respond to go help the ball. Goes for the pass. Unfortunately, when you have this really stupid modifier active on the troll, it lasts until you either move them again or activate them. And while that modifier is on the troll, they actually cannot exert tackle zones, they can't catch, they can't do anything. So when they went to pass to the troll responded, but even if the pass went through, which it did not, unfortunately, even with the free reroll, it would have been a failed catch and a turnover. Now, what you can do with a player like this, if they have really stupid or wild animal, whatever is giving you problems, is that if you don't want to move them and you don't want to attack or do anything with them for whatever reason, you can simply click them and a little menu will pop up above them and you can just press activate. This is also especially helpful if you're playing against a vampire team who's using a lot of hypnotic gaze against you. You can just click that, click activate, and it will remove this debuff so that you can start throwing to them or whatever you want to do. Alright, now the Khemri have the ball in the center of the field, surrounded by Black Orcs, however, so it's going to be a little bit tricky to get them out of there. Honestly, pretty amazing that the skeleton caught the ball. I think that is literally a 1 out of 6 chance, so... Moving some players up to assist with hits. Knocks his Black Orc out of the way, gets them off the ball carrier. Ball carrier is now unmarked. Doesn't really have any way forward to go, though. So what the Khemri player is doing here is trying to form a cage. When you're playing a really heavy bashy team like this that just... Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. When you're playing a team like this where they are just so slow, you need to form a heavy cage and just kind of push your way through. Having players on each corner of the ball carrier is a really effective cage, and what that means is that you have 2 spaces out, you have tackle zones surrounding the ball carrier. So nobody is going to be able to come in and actually attempt to attack the ball carrier without first making a dodge into a 3 tackle zone mark, which is incredibly difficult to do. And you're not going to have any support on it either because these 4 corners are covered, meaning that you can't have any kind of ally marking. So what you end up having to do against cages like this is you have to take out players from the corners before you can actually attack the ball carrier effectively. And it's a very strong defensive option. So if you're the kind of team that is not able to just kind of sneak somebody through and lead them to the end of the end zone, at the end of the field, I should say, then making a cage like this and just advancing as slowly as possible is probably your best option to have. Fortunately, Jerry Spinefield was injured by a Black Orc here. No long-term effect, did not regenerate. which is going to give 2 skill points to that black orc. Now, I had somebody ask about how skill points are earned, so real quickly, I'll just make a recap. You get 1 skill point for a successful pass. The person who threw the ball gets a skill point. You get 2 skill points for any injury you get on another player. Regardless of whether they are healed or not, you still get the skill points. Now, this specifically has to be an injury that is made after a block. So either you need to attack them and roll those dice, those blocking dice, and you knock them down and that results in injury, or a situation like this where the Khemri player attacked the black orc and injured himself. That still counts as skill points for the black orc. Any other instance of you getting an injury, say tripping a player, or they failed a going for a roll onto you so it looks like your player punched them, or knocking them off the side of the field, does not give you skill points if they get injured. The other way you can get skill points is through touchdowns. You get 3 for that, and you get 5 skill points assigned to a random player at the end of the game who is your MVP. You have no way to influence who the MVP is. The MVP could be a player who died, in which case you're not getting any skill points. It could also be a player that you hired, say a star player, which again means you're not getting any skill points for the MVP, which really sucks. If you're playing a match and your opponent concedes, you actually get 2 MVPs, which is really nice, and they don't get anything. Now moving on to the orc player here, moved one of the blitzers over to the side of the field. Kind of risky. I'm guessing that they wanted to assist their other blitzer there to get them off the edge. Goes for a red die roll against one of the mummies, and unfortunately it doesn't work out. Also didn't stand up their black orcs first, which means that these aren't doing anything now. Starts off with a hit from a mummy to a black orc. It's a knockdown, clearing the way for the ball carrier. There's a very easy gap to move through now that you can create a new cage. Also moving his mummies over to kind of reinforce the cage. Having 4 Tomb Guardians around your ball carrier, this is the strongest cage in the game, by far. It is incredibly difficult to actually break this cage, and if you can keep it going to the end of the field, you're golden. Goes for a hit on the troll, just gets a push. Unfortunately, really stupid activates on the troll. Stands up a black orc, tries to move, but unfortunately fails the dodge. And like I said, the Khemri player is just going to start moving his cage forward to the end zone. Going for another hit on the blitzer here. Gets it. Just a stun though. And you can see here that that was a 2-die block. And again, that is because this troll here with a really stupid modifier currently has the debuff active, which means no tackle zones are being exerted, which means that this skeleton is free to assist the blitzer in this hit. So that's why that's a 2-die block right there. And in fact, if the mummy wanted to, it could also leave without making a dodge roll. But instead, he's going to go for a hit on the troll. And you can really see that what the Khemri player is trying to do here is get any opportunity for injury that he can. Gets a hit with the troll and the skeleton. Fortunately, just a stun. At this point, orcs really need to start responding by picking the players up, which it looks like they're doing. Unfortunately, these black orcs have 4 movement, and when you stand up on your turn, you lose 3 spaces of that. So they can only move 1 space before they have to make going for it rolls. Tries to go for a hit here to free up the blitzers. Goes for another hit with the both down. Unfortunately, it doesn't pay out. Currently, the ball carrier is 6 spaces away from the end zone. He has a normal movement of 5, so he could get a touchdown here, but it's a safe situation. Doesn't need to go for it. He's going to stop right at the end zone. And you see, he knows he doesn't really need to try and cover the front corners at this point, given the positions of the other team. And opts to move this Tomb Guardian over here to block this lineman. He's really the only player that could support anyway. So at this point, there's no stopping that touchdown. And now it's just time to punch each other. Now these Orks are stood up. They do have 4 movement now. Gets a block here. Still trying to free up these blitzers. And goes for a foul. Fortunately, Thick Skull stops that from being a knockout, but the ref does not catch it. No red card for the Orks. Hits a mummy with a troll. Nothing. Manages to get a dodge against that blitzer. They do have 3 agility on the blitzers there, so not too bad. Blitzes with the Black Orc, gets a hit. And again, just a stun. Very hard to hurt skeletons. You just keep stunning them because of their thick skulls. Three turns left. Probably just going to go for the touchdown on the Khemri. Could keep fighting if you wanted to, though. Let's see. Gets them both down, but they both have block. Decides not to push it. And that is a touchdown made by Indiana Bones. You see, it does the Thriller dance in the end zone. Pretty quick touchdown. I think that might be one of the fastest touchdowns we've had so far in the league. I know the Lizardmen had like a 3-turn touchdown, but that one was pretty quick as well. Especially for Khemri. Alright, opts to go with the same defensive formation. Orks move their players in a little bit, but otherwise it looks the same. Where's the kick going? Nice weather. Ooh, and a really nice kick by the Khemri, very far back. For some reason routed that to make it a going for it roll, I'm not sure why. Can't move the troll because, as I've said, he really needs to have a handler right next to him. Also, I'm a little bit surprised that they opted to pick up the ball with the lineman when the thrower is a lot better at that job. I didn't catch this. The mummy has replaced one of the skeletons on the line of scrimmage. And unfortunately, well, it does manage to get a push. Another stun on the skeleton. That thick skull just making it very difficult. Unfortunately, it's... yeah, I think it's just about impossible for the Orks to score a touchdown from this position. So, it's just all going to be about making hits. Now, the Orc coach did tell me that they created their team purely based on who could win with physical superiority and just wanted to dish out as much damage as possible during the league, which is a very viable option when you're playing a team like Orcs. Kill all the other players, you don't have to worry about actually trying to maneuver and score a touchdown. You can just walk right in. So, but that's pretty hard to do with a fresh team like this. You need to get a couple skills so that your Black Orcs are putting in a lot more work. Here we have the Khemri player responding by, I assume, just also going for as many hits as they can. Alright, final turn for the Orks goes for a pass. Has to use a reroll, and unfortunately fails it. And here the Khemri are just going to collect as many hits as they can. This is what happens when we have two bashy teams going up against each other. It just kind of turns into a brawl. And that's halftime. This match going by pretty quickly. So far we got one skeleton injured on the Khemri team, and that's it, which is unusual. Normally with teams like this you would see a lot more injuries, but just given the armor values and how difficult it is to actually hurt both of these teams, it's just not really happening. Alright, so now we're going to have the ball kicked to the Khemri team at the beginning of the second half. Now, the way this was explained to me, which is something I actually did not know, never bothered looking into it, is that it is decided who gets kicked to at the beginning of the second half based on who was kicked to at the beginning of the match. So if you chose to defend at the beginning of the match, you're going to be receiving at halftime, which is exactly what the Khemri player here did. And perfect defense, Orks can change if they'd like in response. Moves a couple blitzers to the front line. Really makes an aggressive forward approach. And the ball lands. Okay, let's talk about these formations real quick. Now, the Khemri formation, once again, they're going to be playing offense. They got those mummies in the front to start kind of dishing out hits and clearing the way. You got your blitzers a couple spots back so they can respond and go assist whoever needs it. And then since there's no thrower, there's just going to be one lineman in the back to pick up the ball wherever it lands. Pretty normal. The Orks here, after they got their perfect defense, very aggressive, knows that there's going to be a lot of people in the center of the field, and probably wants to go for all the hits they can. So again, we have 4 black Orks all ready to punch. I probably would have left 2 of these blitzers out and put them a little bit more on the sides, and perhaps moved linemen and the thrower into their places, or had the thrower on the side as well to kind of push through the flanks and go for the ball, because you do have a lot of players tied up in the middle right here, and the Khemri team especially is not going to be particularly well suited to responding to any kind of flanking where they go for the ball. So that's probably something that could be done. Khemri player going to start off trying to get hits on all of the weaker players. Going for the black Orks is not the option here because it's just a little bit harder, not as likely to get injured. So hitting the blitzers makes sense. 2 stuns, pretty nice. Moves the mummies into support. Moving the blitzers back to cover the ball. Not really sure why. Maybe just in case the skeleton dropped it, they could have a chance at picking it up, I suppose. But considering there's nobody on this side of the field, he doesn't really need support. Does get a pretty lucky roll and pick up the ball, though, so Khemri are ready to rock. Orks bursting through the front line. And we get a stun on one of the linemen. Now, right here, if you blinked, you'll miss it. You'll see that the Ork coach attacked with a blitzer and got a skull and a both down roll. You gotta remember that both down when you have block like this means that it's actually in your favor that you use it. So, unfortunately, that was kind of a wasted reroll there. I will say, though, if you see any kind of misplays here, the Orc coach did tell me that they did not have any time to practice leading up to this, and they plan to just learn the game via trial ball fire, which is, you know, perfectly valid in my opinion. I think that's a great way to learn the game. And Orcs are certainly a good team to do that with. Forming up a cage around the ball carrier. And the mummies are going to clear the path, it looks like. And you can see the way that these mummies are actually situated. It's hard for the Orcs to even get in front of the ball carrier. So you're creating something of a hallway for the ball carrier to just walk right to without any kind of resistance. Troll goes for a hit on the mummy, only gets a push, unfortunately. And gets a reroll. Doesn't have to deal with the down. Knocking these mummies out of the way so you can make your way to the ball carrier. Blitzes onto the other mummy. Now, these mummies are resilient. They do have 9 armor, and they're not likely to be injured, but if they do get knocked down, it kind of sucks because they only have 4 movement and they can't move very far. Fortunately, Thrower tries to make a move through a tackle zone there and ends up tripping. And that's a turnover. Khemri player is really committing a lot of players to the left side of the field here. Tries to go for that going for it, but ends up tripping. Like I said, you only get the 1 free movement with the mummy, so it is hard to reposition them if you have to stand them back up. All things considered, though, there's not really a break in the line for the Orcs to come through. Mummies are very hard to knock over, so you can kind of reposition the skeletons here pretty easily. Starting to play for the left side of the field. I would say maybe you're kind of overcommitting to the cage at this point because I don't think the Orcs have a very good opportunity of coming in to even contact the ball carrier, but I guess you can't play it too safe, you know. Now there's one corner of the cage down, so maybe I spoke too soon. Unfortunately, already out of rerolls, Troll gets a attacker down result. And we have an injury on one of the Black Orcs from a mummy. Miss next game, unfortunate. That's a rough one to have. But finally an injury for the Khemri team. Just like the Black Orcs, the Khemri really want to try and level up those mummies as soon as possible to get them Mighty Blow, meaning that they're going to be dishing out way more injuries and start leveling up even faster. It's by far the hardest part about playing a bashy team in the early stages of a league is just not having skills on your higher strength players. Because even though you're hitting more, you really need skills to make them really effective. Personally, when it comes to bashy teams, I tend to prefer teams that actually have more middle strength players that start off with some skills. Like the Norse, for instance. Orcs really bashing the hell out of this mummy on the right side. Could probably start peeling a few of them off to go contest the ball carrier, otherwise Khemri are just going to walk it in. Gets a stun on one of the mummies, though. Oh, and goes for a foul. But nothing pays off. Another stun on a skeleton towards the ball carrier. That frees up some of your players a little bit. Push this mummy out of the way. Could possibly move the black orc towards the ball carrier. Nope. Chooses instead to go for a second hit on the mummy. That right there was crazy. A very low chance to dodge for the mummy there. That would have been a 33% chance. If I remember correctly, I did watch this match as it was being played out. And if I remember correctly, that was a misclick. And rightfully so, very much scared the coach of the Khemri team. But he got lucky on the rolls. Could have been a nasty turnover. He did have a reroll, of course, but even with a reroll, the odds on something like that are not great. Lots of stuns being dished out by both teams, but not as many injuries as you'd like to see, unfortunately. And just slowly advancing the whole team towards the left side of the field. You got over half your team over on the left side of the field working towards the end zone. I feel like the Orks really need to pull some players back and respond to that. Focusing maybe a little bit too much on just a couple of players. Goes for a foul with the troll on a mummy. And injures the mummy. 2 injuries, in fact, due to decay. Unfortunately, one of them is missed next game. Does he regenerate? No, he does not. But the troll is red carded sent off for the rest of the match. So the Khemri player is going to be out down a mummy for their next match, that's for sure. But unfortunately, the troll on the Orc team did not get any skill points for that. And in the closing turns of the match, I think the Khemri player is probably just going to try and run out the clock while they go for hits here. Goes for a foul of his own. And nothing happens. Unfortunate. Now, something to say about fouling on both these teams is, while it can be an effective way to get enemy players off the field for the rest of the match, it's also very risky. You know, typically the teams that are going to be fouling the most are teams that have really cheap players that they can afford to have extras of, that they can afford to actually be fouling with, something like goblins or halflings or ogres who have their noblars. When you're fouling with players like this throughout the match, the orc coach has actually gotten pretty lucky. Unfortunately, that's a black orc sent off along with their troll, but since we're towards the end of the match, it doesn't matter as much. But there's no extra players on this team, right? So if a player gets sent off, you're putting yourself at a permanent player disadvantage for the rest of the match. Whereas those other teams, you usually have a couple spare goblins or maybe a bribe or a spare halfling or something. So fouling can be risky. And normally on a bashy team like this, I would do what the Khemri player has done and actually save it to the end of the match, so that it's not as big a deal if you're missing a player. Touchdown made by Deddy Izzard. Some great puns on the players for this team. Orks are down 3 players, Khemri are down 2 players, so it's still a pretty even match, but with only 2 turns left for the Orc team, I don't see anything coming out of this. Now, technically, there could be a touchdown made by the Orc player here, but they would have to set up their players in a very specific way that I don't see happening. Khemri is just going to try and stop any kind of advance and go straight for hits. Orcs just use one of the preset formations. Very good kick by the Khemri here. Now, if the Orcs wanted to try and go for a 2-turn touchdown, again, it is possible. You would have to have your blitzers set up on the line of scrimmage since they have 6 movement. And then have your thrower pick up the ball, pass to one of your blitzers, and then the blitzer would have to move its full movement towards the end zone for 2 turns in a row. So it's unlikely to pay off because chances are the Khemri are going to be able to pull some kind of player away, but it is possible and maybe worth trying. Not a whole lot going on at this point of the match anyway, so, you know, I say why not, right? The field's only 24 spaces long, 12 for each side, so if you have 6 movement, you only need 2 turns. Unfortunately, it goes for the pass to a blitzer, fails on the reroll. If you move a little bit closer before you go for a throw, it becomes easier to pass, and it's actually higher chances to succeed, but... Fortunately, I think the Orc coach has actually attempted 2, maybe 3 passes this match and hasn't gone a single one, which is unfortunate. It can be nice to do those just for the skill points. Leveling up players is always important. Khemri player going for yet another foul here on the lineman. When you're fouling at this point in the match, you're really just trying to screw over the other player for the next game, to be honest. But that was final turn for the Khemri. Not a whole lot else to do. And the Orc could dish out a couple punches, but that's going to be it. Going for another foul on the mummy. And nothing. Goes for a pass with the thrower. Gets the pass. But doesn't get the catch. Does it get on the reroll? Nope. Unfortunate. And that's game. Well, not a whole lot to say about that match. Like I said, it's 2 bashy teams against each other, so you expect them to punch a lot. You expect maybe some more injuries, but what happens, happens. If you look at the MVPs here, we had MVP on David Boney for the Khemri team, putting him at 5 out of 6. Only a lineman, so nothing too special. However, Gorfang Eatfing for the Orcs is a black orc that got MVP, and he also got 2 skill points from an injury he got that match, meaning that that black orc actually gets to level up now, which is very nice because the faster you can level up your black orcs, the better. Get that guy a mighty blow, and he'll be a killing machine in no time. Let's see, we got 13 skill points for the Khemri, 7 for the Orcs, so not great gains, but again, like I said, the Orcs got to level up. The Khemri did not, and they're also out of mummy for the next match, so who's the real winner here, you know? Anyway, that's about all there is to say for this match, so I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.